I'm Andy Smith. I'm the chair of the Coney County Conservation Bank Board, here for our November 19th, 2019 meeting. In attendance are members Emily Hitchcock, Laura Havron, Fran Ruddenlet, and myself, which is a quorum. Calling it to order. First item of business is approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion
So moved.
to approve? We have a second.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approval?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
No, you're not opposed. Very good. Treasurer's report. Our treasurer, Frank Ables, is not here. I would propose that Fran's the vice chair, right?
Yeah.
I'd propose that we have Fran Ruddenlet read the treasurer's report, and all you have to do is read the okay, yeah. So we got September, October for the Community First, September, October for the state pool.
Treasurer's report, period ending September 30th, 2019. Month opening balance, 14,980. Zero. Balance in accounts, 14,980. Period ending October 31st, 2019. Month opening balance, 14,980. Deposits, 200. Total deposits, $200. Expenditures, zero. Balance in account as of this period, 15,180.
Very good. And that's the Community First, and now the local.
That was Community First. This is for the local government investment pool, period ending September 30th, 593, 148, 42. Expenditures, zero. Reinvestments, 1,061. 07. Balance in account, 594, 209, 49. Period ending October 31st, the local government investment pool, 594, 209, 49 dollars. Expenditures, zero. Reinvestments, 1,049.05. Balance in account, 595, 258.
Okay, and that was the local government investment pool. Do we have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'd like to say that I believe that on that Community First one, the first ones that Fran read, that $200 is from Fran. That was her donation to the bank. All in favor of approving these?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And Fran, we're going to have you sign those as well, please, ma'am. Very good, thank you. Next on the agenda is discussion items, continued discussion regarding alternate funding sources. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to bring up in that category?
There is some discussion ongoing about Rally in the Valley, which is a local road cycling event that's held every spring and has been held by Oconee forever. And there is discussion about having it transferred to a separate entity, and all of the proceeds go into the OCCB, the net proceeds every year. So it's still in the early stages, primarily because there is a need for additional volunteers. Kind of a core group has been running it with a host of additional volunteers for the day of the event, but that core group has lost some membership, and some of the members can't assume as many duties as they have in the past. So that is something that is would be a small, at its current level, it would be a small donation every year. And if any board members want to volunteer or know people who might be interested in supporting that event, there are some things that are needed to be done that can be done, that are done solely before the event, and then you can attend the event and enjoy it. However, if the fundraising is increased and we up it, if we have a more coordinated fundraising approach, then it could be a vehicle to start a more serious fundraising where we're talking, instead of, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, we're talking potentially, if we really had a serious fundraising associated with it, $100,000 or whatever. I know some events raise way into the six figures. I'm not sure that in this community, that the ones I'm familiar with are in slightly larger communities. But Andy and I have both worked on it, and that is frankly part of the reason, because we have felt like it would be inappropriate for us to be fundraising for Oconee Forever unless we recused ourselves from anything that Upstate Forever presented, and so we have decided to back out of that organization. And there is still a core group. So that is,
What's the date again?
we don't have a date yet because it's not, we're still, Andy might be able to give more information on that in terms of where we are in the process.
We're still firming up the process of changing the event, but it generally happens in May. I mean, every year it happens in May sometime. So it'll be a Saturday in May. And we actually start working on it about this time of year. There's some preliminary things that need to be done, and then we really start working on it after the first of the year. And it brings in 150 to 200 bicycle riders. We're trying to get up to 300, and I think we clear somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 every year. And it's a really great event. It's actually been listed as one of the top 10 bike rides in South Carolina. It's a very good event. It occurs on a piece of property that has a conservation easement on it, and all the funds that have been raised through it have gone towards conservation purposes. And so this year the intent would be, or next year the intent would be to donate those funds raised to the Oconee County Conservation Bank.
What do you do at the event?
Well, it has a 30-mile and a 60-mile road cycling event that starts early in the morning. And then, and this is part of what makes it so unique, is we have locally smoked, cooked barbecue, and with locally cooked sides that are just super, and music and beer. So it makes it usually ends about 2:30ish in the afternoon, but the cyclists can come back from their ride and their families can come join them. And I think that's important for some of them whose families are tired of seeing the absent father or mother every weekend as they go off to ride. But regardless, and then local other folks can come. You don't have to be associated with a cyclist to come to the music and food part of the event. But that usually runs from about 11 to 2:30, and that's the fun part of it.
Andy, can I
Yes,
ask
sir.
you, there's not a mountain bike component on this, is there?
There is not a mountain bike component. We've thought of that, but there is not one. There hasn't been.
Gotcha.
And the big reason there's not is because it would take a substantial additional core group of volunteers. If we had some volunteers who were interested in adding that component, say 3 or 4, that said, well, we'd like to hook in with you and we'll take responsibility for the mountain bike part, then it would be great, because it's been
Feel a little dangerous to
discussed.
start the ride at Stump House, I think. Not to mention hard.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about the new,
Yeah,
trail
exactly.
there, but
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask.
So is it always held in the same location?
I guess we've been in that location about 4 years now. It's on,
Lake Jamaica Road.
it's at Lake Jamaica.
With that?
It was an old camp way back when. It's a beautiful piece of property, privately owned, that has conservation easement on it. Before that, it was at Calyx Farms, which was out on Highway 11. And then the very first year, it was at Shay Airy's house, who was one of the original Oconee County Conservation Bank board members.
And the ride goes,
Into Choey Valley,
okay,
doesn't go up the escarpment, but it's a beautiful ride. It's
Okay.
really a nice ride, and people really love it. I mean, folks that come, they come from all over, mainly the southeast, but we've had folks from New York and the Midwest. They really love it because it's more than just a ride. You know, it's a really nice event.
And we do have people who come down from, I think it's Pennsylvania, that we've got some folks that come down every year. And then we always pick up a few from Colorado or,
Florida.
and we have a Florida contingent that comes every year. But the Midwest, those are more scattered. It's more that they're planning a trip to be in the East around that time, and they put this on their list because it is getting a reputation for road cyclists as being a good event. So-
And so if the new kind of reformed group goes forward with the event, it'll be that group's event. It's not going to be the bank's event.
Yeah.
And it'll happen with or without the bank. The bank won't be involved, though we may have volunteers from the bank or folks we know helping with it. And then that group that'll run the event will make its decision on where it's going to give the money. And this year, we're talking about doing it to the bank. So I don't think, it doesn't need bank approval or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I
I
get it.
just wanted to bring it up because we thought that it's actually be good for the bank, and it's also a good segue for our intent to continue working on private fundraising, which I think we ought to just segue to now if there's
Okay.
anything to report in that vein.
Before you segue?
Go ahead.
You made me remember that the first 2 years of the event, the proceeds did go to the OCCB. They were much smaller, as any event, the first couple of years are not very, it takes a little while to develop an event and get a reputation, so they weren't very large donations, but the event traditionally, because it's always supported conservation, and the OCCB has been one of the recipients of funds from it.
So
So-
I think on the other alternate fundings.
So if you, going back to the event, I'll volunteer.
Okay.
Pending graduations.
Okay, yes,
Great.
So-
Thanks, Fran.
thank you.
So, anybody have anything else to report on alternate funding sources? I think, Ryan, we've been talking about, developing a list of folks that we can approach. Any progress on that?
No, not really progress in addition to, I think what I brought to the group after meeting at Harper Construction. And kind of a continued question in my mind of, and I think I've discussed this with you on different occasions, but the reasoning, like what is the reasoning behind Oconee's, the way we're set up is that the county council approves everything we do, but they don't fund anything we do. So there could be a potential donor who might sort of wonder, because immediately when I was in the meeting at Harper, when I brought up how we were funded with our money and how the process goes with us, everyone kind of looked at me strange when I said that the council has to sign off on what we do. And And I didn't say that had been a problem. I just said, that's the way this is set up. And there was kind of like, really? Well, that's kind of strange, you know? So, I guess I'm just putting it out there. It's just sort of crossed my mind, like, I've wondered, could that be, like, if we approach people, could that be
We are
questioned?
appointed by the council.
Well, we're a government entity.
That's right.
We're created by ordinance, by county ordinance. The county council created us, and I understand what you're saying. It may create questions, but it's not something that can be changed.
Well, I don't know if that's entirely true.
Yeah, well,
But that would be and there's no proposal to change, but it's a question. I think my thought and approach on this is that I think we accept who we are and how we're structured and go forward with our fundraising efforts and see how they pan out. And if it turns out that it is a chilling effect that, a big donor, private donor might, says, I'm not going to give you funds. I would give you funds, but I'm not going to give you because I don't want it to go through, I don't trust the county council, or I didn't like this member or something weird.
I think my point is, I think we're kind of being blind to the fact that there is a lot of division politically right now. And, I mean, I guess you could say it as a nation too, but the point is, I have zero problem with our council right now. This is our council right now. This is not going to very likely be our council in 4 or 5 years. It could be different. There could be different people.
Absolutely.
So I'm just sort of like verbalizing that there could be a potential. I don't, that was the first time it really came to mind, and it was kind of like, wow, there could be, but that's as far as it went.
After Ryan talked to me about that, and I think we want you to report about that meeting as well, Ryan, that I talked to somebody that I think is a potential large donor to the bank and asked her that question, if she thought that would, how she felt about that. And at first, she was kind of like, yeah, I don't like that aspect of it. But as we talked it through and told her how the bank works and that the county so far has approved everything we've approved, she felt better about it. But initially, it was very chilling to her, just that, and I mean, and that's the perspective. That was the concern that was brought up. And it's not that I think that we have that concern, but people brought that concern to us from the outside, and so we're like wondering about it. But I still think that the only real data we'll get on it is if we try. And if we, get that response, then we might say, wow, there is a problem, And I think the issue is we don't know if there is a problem yet, but we may find out there is.
I wonder if maybe the issue is that people think, gosh, does the county council really control that money? And they can do with it what they want as opposed to what our recommendations are. I don't know. Can they control the money? Do they have
Only
access to it?
by not approving.
Only by not approving.
That's correct.
So that's, okay.
And that's what I talked through with that potential donor, was that whole, this money can't be taken somewhere else. It's only for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was part of the concern.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that was alleviated.
And I would think if the county ever does disapprove of something, that there would be a reason for it. They would explain it, and then we could always go back and clear that up, rectify the situation or whatever, get the additional documents and go forward and appeal again to them.
Right.
If they don't approve, the money goes back to the Conservation Bank, right?
Correct.
Oh,
Well,
it
it
never
never-
leaves.
it never
leaves
Never
there.
leaves.
Yeah.
It's designated.
That's correct.
So the meeting I attended back in October, Chris, you weren't there at Harper Construction.
No, I wasn't there.
Yeah, we met at Harper Construction, Doug Harper there in Greenville, really nice office. And there was a handful of people from Upstate Forever there, Andrea Cooper and Scott Park. Eddie Martin was there from here at Oconee. Of course, Doug Harper, who's the CEO of Harper Construction, and Jordy Johnson from Spartanburg. There was 2 or 3 others that I didn't catch their names, but just shook hands. So there was a pretty good group of people, which spanned from, of course, Upstate Forever, and then we had couple people on speakerphone, but long story short, it was a pretty good cross-section of the conservation
Community.
organization community of South Carolina. And the consensus was that, I mean, we're all really working towards the same goal. We kind of go about it slightly different, but that we could definitely all help one another. And in fact, Andrea, Upstate Forever's chairperson, executive director, basically said, look, anytime if we wanted to approach donors in our area, they would be glad to help get media stuff together, literature that could help. I mean, she had a map that was furnished and Doug showed that was this really cool depiction over the last, I think, 30 years going into the future of the development of upstate and specifically the I-85 corridor. But it really opened some eyes because it shows you in our area how we really do have to get on conservation because we're one of the last pockets that's not just, you see the amoeba kind of spreading of development. And
Did you get a copy of that map?
I did, and what I want to do is actually see if I can get her to email me a copy so I can get it to you digitally.
Yeah.
And
That would be great.
Just had not, I can maybe find it and I'll pass it, assuming I can grab it. But long story short, it kind of made me feel good because for one, they were very complimentary of Oconee County and like, hey, that's really awesome. And the second thing is that I feel like they would be there if we needed them, you know, especially like Rally in the Valley. I mean, kind of getting the word out to those groups to kind of, I know they'd love to be involved or would,
Well, they have been.
okay.
As
This,
Chris
I'm
can-
new to this, so I don't.
Well, Oconee Forever is part of Upstate Forever, and so they've done the press releases for it in the past.
Okay.
That's one of the things, since it's going to be an independent organization, then that's just one of the blanks. We need someone who can handle things like press releases. But we still expect to see Upstate Forever there with a booth, because conservation organizations, or we hope, let me put it this way, we hope they will be there with a booth, because conservation
And a cooler.
organizations are all invited to set up booths. But
I wanted to interject two things. First is housekeeping. This meeting's gonna be over at 10:30, by 10:30, hopefully before Katie has to leave then. The second is, on that meeting was actually called by Raleigh West, who is the executive director of the South Carolina Conservation Bank Board. He's the one that put that together. It was
He was
really
the
great.
facilitator.
He wanted to bring together kind of the upstate conservation folks.
That was the meeting you sent to me, but I was out of town.
That is correct.
Right.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
was
And I
out of town
think,
as
if
well.
I'm not mistaken, we're gonna meet again, hopefully before year end, but definitely first quarter if we can't make, this year. And I'm sure they would love for anybody from here to attend.
Absolutely.
Could you put out an email with the date?
I don't have a date.
The date, when you get it?
Okay, yeah.
And Katie, am I correct, or maybe Andy needs to check with the county attorney, that although we'll be discussing conservation issues, we won't be discussing board items, so we could all attend without
Well-
it being,
So I've conversed with David Root, county attorney, about that. And I did the conversation in relation to Rally in the Valley. You know, if we had 4 or 5 bank members participating, I'm thinking, is that an open meeting violation? So the two basic rules are, if it's less than a quorum, bank members can be together talking whatever. I mean, they can even talk bank business as long as there's no quorum. So it's under 4. That's one hand. And the other is it was 4 folks. You can't discuss OCCB board business. And I would almost think that in that context of that meeting, that it would be so close to Conservation Bank Board business that we wouldn't want to have 4 people there. That's my feeling about it, because those, when we're talking about Rally in the Valley, we're talking about the logistics of putting on a fundraising event. We're not talking about bank or business, but there, the conversation is gonna be about conservation issues. So that would be my understanding and recommendation on that. So I would think 3 members could avoid that with no problem.
I have there's an article in the paper maybe 2-3 days ago, and it was about Duke Energy, the group there that donates to Habitat Protection. I think it's called HEP, isn't it, something like that? Habitat Environmental Protection. And they give grants to organization. Is that ever something we could apply for?
I think it is, absolutely. And I read the same article, and my thought was, oh yeah, there's an entity we could apply to. I don't know whether our original grant came through that. If it didn't come through that, I wouldn't want to go to that source at Duke. I want to go back to that original source, But yes, otherwise, if it's the same thing, Chris?
Yeah, do you mind? I can clarify that. I wanted to say a couple things, actually, if I can go.
Just state your name for the record.
Yes, thank you. All right, my name is Chris Starker. I'm a land conservation manager with Upstate Forever. And I wanted to get back to the meeting y'all had with Doug Harper Construction, because I think there's 2 important things about that come up. One is that in the Low Country, they have several other mechanisms for leveraging funds down there that we don't have in the Upstate. So by talking with Doug Harper Construction and others, and by working together, what we're trying to do, and I wasn't at this meeting, so I could be totally wrong, but I think it's important to just clarify this. We're trying to sort of pool an upstate conservation fund in a way that would be able to leverage more funds in the upstate. In other words, down in the Low Country, they can go for federal grants that can provide matches to the state bank, for example. That we don't have access up to. There's basically coastal preservation grants that we're not on the coast, frankly, quite clearly. The other thing is Coney County Conservation Bank is looking for alternative funding, and if Upstate Forever is doing the same thing, and who knows who else is also doing the same thing, we're all hitting up the same people for the same purposes. But by coming together, we actually become a stronger voice for a unified conservation agenda of sorts, in that we can appeal to the same donors, not as individuals, but as collective voices that become really far more appealing. So I think those 2 things are, with this Upstate Conservation Fund, that's kind of how I phrase it, is really what that meeting was about. Is that how can we be working together to achieve these same goals? We're doing the same thing, we're going to the same people. Now, the Kiwi Toxaway Habitat Enhancement Program is a standalone program that came out of the Kiwi Toxaway Hydroelectric relicensing through Duke Energy. That was back in 2009. It's the same relicensing process that funded the Oconee County Conservation Bank, but it's not the same program. So it's 2 separate funds, and the two funds can be used simultaneously. Whether the bank can apply for those funds, I don't know. I think you'd have to go back and look at those bylaws. But the Kiwi Toxaway Habitat Enhancement Program was specifically designed to fund habitat enhancement projects in the watersheds that affect the project boundaries. So that would be portions of Oconee County, but there are some of Oconee County drains to the Savannah River Basin, for example, or outside of the basin. I'm trying to think. I'd say it's Kiwi, Lake Kiwi goes to the Savannah. So I think there may be parts of Oconee that are left out. I'm not sure. So you'd have to look geographically at this. And then also parts of Pickens as well. So that's kind of how the program is different. It's not specifically to Oconee County. It goes to the other side of the lake. But it is to benefit habitat enhancement for Lake Kiwi or in the project boundary.
Could you say again what those 2 programs are at Duke?
So there's Kiwi Toxaway Habitat Enhancement Program.
Is that part of Duke? I mean, that's a standalone entity, right?
They came out of the Duke relicensing is what
Okay.
I mean. It was part of the negotiations for the relicensing agreement.
Uh-huh.
So that was one thing that happened. There are actually three different things that happened. The second one was there was funds that came to the Conservation Bank here to fund
Right.
some conservation projects. And there was a third one that was to fund a Lake Kiwi source water protection team. So that's a whole third separate project that's more about modeling water quality impacts, and may, I'm not gonna say it can or can't or won't or will, but could feasibly fund conservation projects as well, provided they were for the purposes of protecting water quality. So it's a little bit further removed, but as we've seen, EPA and the Clean Water Act has clarified that land conservation does protect water quality, and 319 projects now, which is under Section 319 of the Clean Water Act, can be used to pay for conservation easements, which is a new tool, which has only happened in the past couple of years. And we're starting to see that being implemented in watershed-based plans, when you start, or included in the watershed-based plans. And when you start implementing those plans, which is the next round, and we're starting to see that now, they're actually starting to come through, you can use those funds to pay for land conservation. How it's done is very, very specific, and the funding is limited, but every little bit counts. And so we're hoping that perhaps the Lake Kiwi Source Water Protection Team may sort of endorse conservation projects as well. Again, those would be projects that affect water quality in the Lake Kiwi watershed.
Is
So,
that the group that got like over $1 million?
Is that the group, it wasn't at 1.2
yeah, I want to say they got like
million?
1.1. It's right about, yeah, just over $1 million. So, yeah.
They're not a granting
From who?
entity, are they? From Duke?
Yeah.
They're
No,
not a
that
granting
is it's a Lake Kiwi Source Water Protection Team. It is in the, gosh, I should know. I want to say somewhere in the relicensing agreement, it's in the license itself, that's something that Duke has to do. So Duke actually has a little bit of oversight. They have a representative that comes to these meetings when they can or calls in. And then there's folks there from utilities like Greenville Water, Seneca Water, Light, and then you've got Pickens County Planning, Oconee County Planning, a few nonprofits like Upstate Forever, Advocates for Water Quality, Advocates for Quality Development, sorry, AQD.
Do you go to those meetings?
I used to, but because Upstate Forever was writing a plan, so Upstate Forever received a 319 grant from DHEC to write the Lake Kiwi Source Water Protection Team did, let me rephrase that to be clear. And since Upstate Forever is on that team, Upstate Forever is writing that plan. And so we have staff members in our water program that do that, so they've been attending those meetings. I attended some for about a year.
Can you send us notice of when the next meeting is?
I can probably let somebody from the team contact you. I'm not really sure
That'd
how
be
that works out. It's, I don't know if those are public meetings or not.
Okay.
I think they're only board members.
It's the team.
Well, I'll ask if you'll give me the contact
Yes,
information.
probably the person to contact is Heather Nix at Greenville Water,
Oh, okay. Stevens' wife.
who used to be our water director at Upstate Forever. She's now with
Yeah.
Greenville Water.
Okay, great.
So, yeah, three different pots of money being used differently, but all sort of in the same area.
But I think what we read about, didn't it say the Duke Foundation or something like that?
Yeah, it
the
was.
granting
And it was
entity?
environmental protection, because they talked about the eagle, well, they want to work on the eagle sanctuaries, but they did the heron
Yeah.
rookeries, whatever they call them.
So was that the Habitat Enhancement Program? Which is-
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah, I have reviewed some of those applications in the past. And a lot of those are coming from scout groups, or they're coming from Friends of Lake Kiwi Society. And they're small little projects like that, which are great. Recently, Natureland Trust submitted a couple of applications for larger projects that would be matched by the Oconee County Conservation Bank, from what I understand. Boones Creek and McKinney's Creek, right up around Lake Jocassee and Lake Kiwi, that are going to be protecting large populations of the Oconee Bell, which, as we all know, are very rare wildflowers.
Would the groups that you're talking about, the Kiwi, Toxaway, both of those groups, the Habitat Enhancement Group and the Water Protection Team, be a part of the upstate funding that you're talking about?
No, I don't think so. And I think, just for the record, I don't speak on behalf of any of those groups. Just to be clear, I just have some involvement, and I'm just trying to provide a little clarity,
He just knows more
information.
than we do.
I think it'd be prudent to follow up with some specific folks from those three. But I think those are, I'm not really sure how the Habitat Enhancement Program is organized. I don't recall those bylaws. The last time I think I saw that was probably 2009 during the relicensing. I think this Upstate Conservation Group is more about getting a few folks together just to talk about how we can collaborate and provide a unified voice. And of course, Eddie Martin was at that meeting as well. So, I wasn't there, but I have heard and spoken to some of our staff about the purposes of that.
So you don't know.
As you describe that, it sounds to me like that the Habitat Enhancement Program, just specifically, rather than being a source of funding for us, is a source of additional funding for people who bring projects to us,
Yes.
so that we fund 10% max. So we need to make sure that, which I think probably all of the applicants are aware of that, and that they, if it is within the appropriate boundaries, that they can seek funding from that program as well as from, but that we would not, because it's for a specific project.
Right.
Is that correct?
That may or may not be correct.
Okay.
I don't think it's something that the bank would apply to for funding. I agree with that. I do think it would be great to be able to have, if, for example, I came in here with an application and I had not applied for that, and you asked me, does that qualify for that? And
Yes. That's
then
right.
I would think, gosh, that's a great way to leverage more funds.
That's what I was.
Because everybody loves a match. If you're putting in 10% and they're putting in 10%,
Yeah.
it makes people happy.
Perhaps, Andy, we can get someone from that program to come talk to us.
Okay,
And,
sounds good. I'll talk
Answer
to Heather,
questions.
I'll talk to Heather next.
Okay,
Okay, Lake Kiwi Source Water Protection Team, different from Kiwi Toxaway Habitat Enhancement
Okay,
Program.
all right.
Maybe there's two
Who's
people.
Yes,
who's the
two
contact
people.
person with the Habitat Enhancement?
I'll ask Scott. I know he sits on that review team,
okay.
so I'll ask Scott and find out who that contact is.
Yes, if we, I think
Okay.
having both, information from both of those would just increase our knowledge.
No doubt.
Yeah, because
Now,
that's where many of us
Adam
are.
goes to those meetings. He's your planner. So Adam Chapman.
Okay.
Adam Chapman is your Oconee County planner.
Uh-huh.
He's on the Lake Kiwi Source Water Protection Team as well.
Okay,
So you've got someone right here in Oconee that can probably
Okay.
do that.
We'll just yell down the hallway.
Adam Chapman, okay.
You talk.
You want me to go get him?
Yeah.
We holler down the hallway
well-
and see if he'll come.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay, I was gonna say, if we're on a tight
Right,
schedule
right.
today, but
So,
we'll
and
holler
we-
down.
I'm totally
but-
kidding too, by the way.
Yeah, okay.
But I know
Well,
him. I
when
can
he
talk-
says,
I
do you
can-
want me to go get you? I'm
No.
literal brain
Yeah,
here.
I think maybe for your next meeting, I'll put him,
Okay.
ask him to put that on the agenda. All right, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I had a question for Ryan. I know before I took off to, in September, I had sent you the contact information on the Kiawake Community Partnership contact. Did you ever talk with them?
No,
Okay,
I have not.
okay. I still think, I've read it up a little more on them, and what they started out doing was tracking organizations that people volunteer for and donate their money to, and they keep track of that. And one of the things they do is some matching grant stuff. Now, I don't know where the money comes from, I don't know how much, but it may be just worth looking into. So,
My understanding was that they were almost like providing a conduit for residents at Kiwi Key to donate money.
Like a community foundation, almost?
No, almost like they're a conduit to, say, these 15 organizations, like Safe Harbor, could be Oconee Conservation, I mean, that are different ways people can donate and sort of plan donations. That was what I got from it, and I was hoping if in contact we could get on there, but
yeah, I'll contact them and
Let's
see.
do
I've just had a lot going on.
Oh,
be honest
well,
with you.
you and me both, so.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's follow up between meetings on that, and I'll help stimulate that. Anything else on this? Okay, so the next action or next item on there is the presentation to the Oconee County Council, which I did. I did an abbreviated PowerPoint, which was abbreviated even more because I couldn't get the technology to work. But I still made the presentation, and you made the recommendations for the county council to approve the awards we had given. And, you know, we approved 3, the one from, through Eddie, the one through Max Stone, and the one through Upstate Forever, Chris. And in between the time of our meeting and the council meeting, Upstate Forever withdrew their application. So I only presented 2, the Moore Farm and the Lyles and the Worthington Hyde Partners project. And they approved both of them at that meeting. And just an aside on that, Worthington Hyde Partners changed names during this year to, is it Cliff Timber? Is that what it is? Cliff Timber LLC. So on some of our documents, we now see Cliff Timber LLC, and that's why, because they went through a legal entity name change and structure. So now we're at new business, and the new business on there is we have a new statement of interest and full application from the estate of William C. Lyles, same property we've reviewed before, but the change is that the application is now for a project for the full conservation purchase of the property and not for a conservation easement. And ultimately, I believe that the path of this project would be to go into the ownership of the Natural Land Trust. And that they would, I think, I'm not sure if they're heading it for a government entity or not, or whether they would manage it themselves. Is that correct, Chris?
In my conversations with them, they do not intend to pass this project along.
Okay.
So this is not something that will be sold or donated to the state, DNR, or PRT. In my discussions with Max Stone, with Nature Land Trust, they do hold title to some properties that that is part of their portfolio. Some properties is part of their strategy to hand off to another entity. This is not one of them.
Okay, I understand. So Chris submitted this, our new statement of interest form, the application, full application there. I don't know if anybody's reviewed that. I went through it not in great detail, but did a review. The conservation value is $661,000. The grant request to us is for $66,100, which is 10% of that conservation value. Just in my look, I mean, I didn't see anything that was out of order in what I reviewed.
I read it too.
Okay, and Fran read it as well. And that's not really the issue. We now have the statement of interest form. We now have the application. Our job is to, between now and December 10th, our next meeting, to review the application ourselves on our own time or together, as long as it's not a quorum. And I suggest going through your criteria ranking sheet yourself so that we come back on December 10th, we're all up to speed, ready to talk about it. And so we don't have to masticate every aspect of the criteria ranking sheet at that meeting, that we'll already have our opinions and our rankings there that we can then pull.
I mean, we've already scored it, so.
We have, in a sense, we've scored this because it's the exact same property.
Yep.
That has been done, that is correct. But I think we still need to, we'll treat it as a new application and re-rank it at that, so it just may be more efficient. But I think that's specific to this, we want to do that review before, if you need to refresh your review. And we need to do that in general for every application we get. When we come to our second meeting, which is our decision meeting, we want to already individually have gone through the applications and done our personal rankings of it. So we bring that to the table at the meeting so that we can do it more effectively and efficiently at the meeting. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this application? Okay. Very good, and we got a letter, cover letter with application that also was a formal withdrawal of that earlier application. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
All right, so now we're on to old business, and that's why Eddie Martin's here. Eddie Martin, so our process is we make our award approval, we take that to county council for their approval. The ordinance says that after the date of that county approval, the applicant has 4 months within which to accept that award from council. We give them notice that the council approved. They have 4 months before they send us back a letter, email, saying that, hey, we accept, okay? And the clock starts ticking at that point. Then they have a year to close on the property. We can extend that up to 6 months. That's the timeline process. Part of the timeline process is also that within 3 months, forward or backwards, of the county council approval, there has to be a current appraisal. That's what our ordinance says. That appraisal needs to be 3 months fresh around that county council approval. So we got a letter from Eddie in the Coney Soil and Water Conservation District, accepting the county council's award and providing the appraisal. The appraisal is from,
Would that have to be updated?
well, that's what we're gonna talk about. The appraisal's from June 1st of 2018, well outside of that 3-month window. Now, Emily and I've talked about, I mean, to me, to our view, 3 months is, again, maybe not arbitrary, but not a good time limit, because this process, I think, as we've seen, can take years. To do the whole puzzle fitting of getting all the funding sources and applications in that applicants that come to us as well have to do, and that 3 months just doesn't work for that. And that's an ordinance change, though. We can't waive that ordinance provision. Only
was gonna
county
be my
council
next.
can make that, and I think at some point, and it shouldn't be in the too far future, we should go to county council and say, let's amend our ordinance to change that window.
Needs to be 12 months because appraisals are allowed to use 12-month comparables on all. The ones I'm involved with are, the window that you can use a comparable is 12 months.
So that's a practical standard that I think is worth approving, and that I think would give applicants enough room to work. 3 months, they can't. Of course, June of last year wouldn't work in the 12 months. Well, no, it wouldn't, because the approval was October 1st, but it's still, we would have something that is workable. So I mentioned that to Eddie, that we got an issue here that somehow we've got to work through. And Eddie, if you want to talk to us on this, I would appreciate it.
Well, as you know, as you folks have realized, that window is probably too small. And being that we're tying in with the Moore property will be in 3 entities. Be you guys, be the State Conservation Bank, and the NRCS. And all of those things, as we mentioned one time before, have different timelines. And we could run out of your timeline before we get everything worked out with the South Carolina Conservation Bank. And right now, the NRCS applications are on hold until they get their money from the Farm Bill. And I've been told from the NRCS rep in Columbia not to let anybody spend any more money on anything right now until they get their monetary figures figured out and see what they're going to have and what they are going to fund. So that puts us in a little bit of a bind from your time frame, from the South Carolina Conservation Bank time frame, and the NRCS. So opening a larger window for those things to happen would be beneficial to the people and not be a hardship on them. I think we need to make these parameters not necessarily as easy as we can, but workable for the people who are putting these applications in who want to try to preserve their property. Okay?
Realistic.
What timelines do the NRCS have, and so on?
Like I said, right now, I don't know the time frame, and each and every one of these things call for an appraisal, okay? So if say we were agreeable to doing another appraisal to present to you guys, and we did not get the time frame worked out with either NRCS or South Carolina Conservation Bank, they may ask for another one. Could possibly be, in this instance, 3 appraisals this person has had to do.
And what do the appraisals cost?
This one, because of the size of the parcel, is going to be $3,200 to $3,600. If I'm required to go to her and ask her to do another one, she's already spent, let's average it out at 34. So she's already done one, the June one. She has to do another one for you, just to get this whole process started. That's on average $6,800. She's only getting $8,100 from you guys. She's spent up all of that on appraisals.
What kind of appraisal is this? $3,400 appraisal?
It's a Yellow Book appraisal.
Wow. Okay.
And Yellow Book appraisals are required for federal money.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So they've got to do the highest priced appraisal, at least in our field.
I mean, that's like a commercial appraisal.
Yeah.
I mean, like an MAI appraisal.
And, there is I'll go back and make sure of that. That's what we have always used with the NRCS properties when we were doing those.
Well, are we required to use a Yellow Book appraisal?
No.
Because I personally think if we have a certified appraisal done by one of our local appraisers, we're talking $375.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally think it is ridiculous to require almost $4,000.
Can you just update it?
We,
I mean,
Well, okay, so where we
I'm
are right now,
sorry.
no, and I agree 100%.
amazing.
We don't have any standards for the kind of appraisal we
Yeah.
use, like Yellow Book or whatever, and we're fine with that. I don't think we have an issue with that. We need to change our ordinance to make it work on the timeline, but I think here today, now, we got a problem with Eddie's project. So they were approved October 1st. They've got till, by the statute, November 1st, December 1st, January 1st per the language of the statute, to do a current appraisal unless we can, find a solution to this. And so,
I talked to Rick this morning, Rick Holstein, who did the previous appraisal, and asked him if he could do an updated. He said by law, they cannot do an updated appraisal.
okay,
All right?
but you don't have to get a Yellow Book for us.
well, we understand that. So
But
let's keep
we've
going.
we've already spent this amount of money, and I guess that's what I'm looking at, okay? But he can present a market analysis comparing market values to the property and possibly make a statement that those values have not changed considerably since the last appraisal has been made, which is in and of itself probably could be used as an updated appraisal, but it's got to be listed according to what he told me this morning. He could do a market analysis.
What's
and
the
that would
cost
be,
of that?
He said a couple $100, maybe.
Okay, all right. So that's the option that's on the table right now, is whether or not we would accept a market analysis
Right.
to meet the requirement for a current appraisal, and the concept would be that that market analysis is akin to an updated appraisal that's already been done. So that's one thing to think about. The other thing to think about is that we could take that same concept, the very same concept, to county council and say, will this work for you in this situation, and get the county's blessing on that.
Right.
That's, we'll say, plan one. Plan two could be a totally new appraisal at the normal appraisal cost of, $300.
Right.
Or something like that, $300 to $500.
Being
So
it-
that's what Eddie will have more to say to us, but that's at least two things for us to choose from today. Go ahead, Eddie.
So, being that this was the first round of applications that we've sought actual money from you guys, us, Upstate Forever, and the Natural Land Trust, these, all these cross-references have made things a little bit more difficult. Maybe we'll know in the future, the applicant probably should not do an appraisal when she puts in, prior to putting in an application. And we can get these packages put together and timeline it all out to where it'll work better in the future. And then they could possibly use the Yellow Book or whatever they've got to have as the one appraisal for everything going forward.
Here's a potential issue with that. We base our awards on 10% of the conservation value of the property.
Right.
We have to have some basis of
Yeah.
what that is.
Yeah.
An appraisal is a good basis for that.
Right.
If we don't get an appraisal early on, which screws up that, now the present 3-month timeline.
Right.
We don't know what to base our award on.
Right, okay. The other thing, I guess, with that is that if we're looking at a property and we think it's a good property, we think it's a good opportunity for you guys to fund it, and we wait until the window for this application and we try to coordinate that appraisal prior to coming to you guys. And then maybe from that point forward, if there's an opportunity for an extension after we've had that and the application process runs into a longer window, maybe you'll have that option in place past now.
And we've talked about that let's say we started with an appraisal, time went by, now it's an outdated appraisal or whatever, and we make an award based on that original proposal. And then there's another appraisal later on. We could say in our award, it's either what we made at first, if the conservation value changes, it's 10% of that value or what we gave forward, whichever's less. So it never increases. It could only go down or stay the same. So we might be able to deal with that in ordinance language.
Okay.
But anyhow, let's go ahead and discuss some more about what we might do.
Separating out proposals to change the ordinance, which I personally want us to start the discussion for that process, because there's something else I would like to mention. But go into your specific issue, Eddie. My concern is, as we all know, we do not have the power to waive a city or a county ordinance. What I frankly do not know, because I have not researched it and it had not occurred to me, is what the county's process is for a waiver of an ordinance. And I suspect it's not just us going to the county council and say, in this instance, we'd like you to waive it and accept an updated market. I don't know what you're closing. You said everything's delayed right now, so I don't know where you are on that. If you were wanting to close immediately, I would strongly recommend that you just get an appraisal that's acceptable to us.
Well, we're going to vote on that.
But for the other thing, if you think it's so far off that you want to wait and see what we do with the county ordinance, that's certainly an option. Assuming that in this county, we can apply it retrospectively, which again, I have no idea. And then, of course, the other thing is how do you waive, what is the procedure the county uses to waive an ordinance for a specific thing? And I don't have a clue. But I don't think it's gonna be that simple. I guess that's what I was trying to say. We could vote that way, but I think you'll be back.
Banks, just to be clear, banks waive rules they have for comparable radiuses that they can use. You typically go 3, 5, and 7 miles. But when you get in rural areas, sometimes you gotta go 50 miles, 100 miles. So I've seen in a lot of cases, man, so I'm not real sure
But
I'm just saying, I don't think it would be unrealistic for the county to change it to 12. I mean,
I'm not saying, to waive it for this particular thing.
no, to change, I mean, I think it is completely unrealistic for the county to use a 3-month.
Oh,
So
yeah.
long-term, we need
Yeah,
them
I
to
mean, the
change the
county in
ordinance.
general should be able to use a 12-month-old.
But the process, the bureaucratic process of changing an ordinance, that's a public process.
Is it?
That takes a
Yeah.
little bit of time.
It is, what they would have to do, this is the way I would understand it, one of the members would have to bring that up for discussion. They would have to have 3 readings on it, and then they would word it and change it.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's one thing, changing the ordinance, which should happen. We know that. The other thing is, can the county even waive that provision now in this particular instance?
Yeah.
And that's what we do or don't know. I mean, part of the issue is that, so you got $200 or so to do a market analysis.
Right.
I mean, in my business, I've seen appraisals cost as little as $200.
Right.
I mean, $300. And this is a small property. You might be able to get a new appraisal that meets our requirements for almost the same price as the market analysis.
All right.
And I think the issue, well, I'll say this, and then if it's appropriate, I'll make a motion. The issue for you is, based on the motion I'm going to make, do you want to go ahead and get that new appraisal, within the 3-month deadline, which is, or do you want to wait until you see what we end up with recommending regarding a revised ordinance and getting that through, and hope that that works with your other applications and funding sources, and try because the one you've got now isn't going to work if it's a 12-month, and that is frankly what I'm going to recommend, when we get to the point where we're talking about the separate issue of what do we want a new ordinance. I think that Ron is absolutely right, that 12-month would be a good standard. And, but in terms of your application right now,
Well, before you make a motion,
Okay.
There's a county council meeting tonight.
Yes.
When's the next county council meeting?
December,
December,
there's only one this month.
I think it's the 3rd. Check.
And there's just one in December?
No, December the 3rd and December 17th.
Okay, so his deadline's January 1st under the present ordinance. So I'm willing to go to the county council tonight, and again, if I need to.
I think you
Okay, just hang on.
You have to be on the agenda.
Okay, I can't bust into the agenda? Okay, all right, so I would go December 3rd, as
Do it.
early as I can go. And so the proposition would be to Eddie, I think, I can tell Eddie whether I was shut down, whether we were rejected on December 3rd, he can make his decision at that point of whether to do the $200, I mean, if they approved it, boom, he could do the $200 one, or he could do the regular appraisal after that and probably have it done by January 1st deadline.
Being that you don't require the high dollar appraisal, and if we
That's
can, I can talk to somebody else about that and have them lined up shortly after the December, we can go ahead and try to schedule an opportunity for them to do it shortly after December 3rd. And then we can get that out of the way and have this fixed.
Right.
But, long picture,
Yeah.
I think the window that we're trying to accomplish here is a good thing for everybody.
Absolutely. And that'll be our plan, is to fix the ordinance in that regard,
The one thing
or get it fixed.
I cannot let go of this issue, so let me just say it again, and then I promise I will not bring it up again.
You don't have to promise.
I do. I suggest before you actually get on the county council agenda, that you touch base with the county attorney
Oh,
and
sure.
make sure
Absolutely.
that they can waive simply because you show up and ask them to waive it
I
as
understand.
the chair of this board.
Yep.
And I think we would have to vote to support that.
Yep.
And I don't, and I'll make that motion. I make a motion that we support, if it is legally appropriate, waiving accepting a market update in the Moore property to meet the 3-month requirement for appraisal. Did you get that, Katie, or do I need to try to do it again?
I'm writing as fast as I can. I didn't get it all, but I can get it again.
Am I supposed to recuse myself? I don't even know.
Oh, yes, yes.
You are on the Moore property?
Yeah, that's right.
I just,
Yeah, if
Sorry,
you'll
Ron.
just step out.
Now that we're specific.
Well, we
Yeah,
don't have
I just
quorum,
realized.
so we do.
Oh,
It's okay, because you didn't vote. so
Yeah, he didn't vote.
you're good.
He's good.
Okay. I'm trying to remember what I said, Katie.
Support, if legally appropriate, accepting a market update for the Moore property. That's what I got.
Okay, to meet the requirements of the 3-month
Current appraisal
current appraisal.
requirement.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion about?
Well, we need a second on that motion or not.
Oh, I'll second it.
Okay, now we can discuss it.
I suggest that you put some weasel language in there. In other words, don't give 12 months, but give some sort of language that.
Yeah, well, that's the ordinance change, and we'll do that. We'll do
This is
that.
the waiver.
This is the waiver just for this
She's
property.
proposing that I, as a chair, go to the county council to seek a waiver of the 3-month current appraisal requirement, after talking to the county attorney, but that's just logistics, I'll do that. And so we'll get an answer from the county council. And once we get that answer, it's gonna either be, yes, do that, the waiver went through, Eddie, or no, Eddie, it didn't go through, get your appraisal. Because we can't waive that requirement. Any more discussion on that? Is it clear enough? It is for a lawyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Eddie.
We need to call Ryan back in.
Yes.
We forgot him one other time.
Katie, are you getting worried that we're not gonna make the 10:30 deadline? Are you worried?
No, I can have somebody step in for me.
No, we're gonna make it. That means you are worried.
No, I'm not worried. He just walked by, so,
Okay, no, we're good, we're gonna
no,
make it.
if you, seriously, if you need to continue.
No, we're
it's
gonna
not-
make
it's
it.
not an issue at all.
We're good.
So do we need to make a motion at all about
Oh,
going to
this-
the council to change the ordinance?
No,
No,
not yet.
okay.
No.
Oh,
Ready to move on?
okay, yes. well,
Okay. All right, so I also wanted to say, we did get the acceptance letter from the Natural Land Trust, and that's dated November 18th. So that's when their clock started ticking for the 12 months to close on that Cliff Timbers LLC of Coney Bell Preserve property. That's, I just wanted to bring up that you'd asked about loans, us, and I researched that with the county attorney. Generally, the Constitution, South Carolina Constitution prohibits local governments from making loans, but the statute for the South Carolina Conservation Bank allows it to actually make loans. So it's a little different, if we wanted to do that, I don't think, that would be a General Assembly change, not a Coney County Council change. So it's possible, and it's not a bad idea, but I wanted to update on that.
Is that a bridge loan you're talking about?
Yeah, essentially, yeah, That like Eddie had brought to us 2 or 3 meetings ago. I don't have anything else on my agenda under old business where we are now. Does anybody else?
Well, the one thing that I think I missed on the agenda, we've already finished new business, right?
But we can go back. What you got?
Can I go back? I don't want to make a motion at this time. I just want to ask, in light of our conversation today, that we all be considering whether or not, or what language we would like in a proposed change to the ordinance. I think that's something we should move forward. I think Ryan's standard of 12 months sounded great. Certainly a lot better than 3. We might also want to think about whether or not in the ordinance we want to specifically provide that in the event the application, other funding sources require an application to, anyway, we might want to consider whether we would accept an updated market analysis, or if that's necessary, if we've got the 12 months. I don't know. But I'm trying.
That could be part of the weasel.
Yeah, I'm thinking outside the box in terms of let's not have to go back to the county council again. The other thing I would like everyone to think about is whether or not we need 3 cycles every year instead of, I personally think that 2 cycles every year would be better, because that would give us 4 meetings where we're basically doing application process if we get very many. And I think we will once, now that we've got some money and we're ironing out our procedures. That would give us additional meetings for us to really get down and work on fundraising and some of the other business that we have. So I'm not making a motion, I'm just asking the county council, the bank members to all start thinking about this, and perhaps at the next meeting, we can have a discussion and start drafting what we would want. And also, if anybody else, and I will probably do this, wants to reread our ordinance again and see if there's anything else that strikes you as needing to be changed, because let's do it all at once.
Absolutely.
So that is new business, but I would like to get us started thinking.
Very good. I agree with that 100%.
Can you email the ordinance to us?
If you still have the stuff that Katie sent you when you were first appointed, it is in that packet. If you don't, I will send it to you. Okay?
And remember, in your communications, we don't communicate together as a group by email. We only communicate, with one person at a time. Because if 4 of us are communicating together on the email, that's a quorum, that's a meeting. We don't do that. So when Katie emails us all, we only respond to her, okay? No, that's great. We want to come up with ordinance changes. At the next meeting, we're going to deal with the application, do our ranking on the application from Upstate Forever. Will we do our calendar for the following year, or will we do that at the February meeting?
February.
Do that in February. Okay, all right. One last thing. I think we're all in agreement that, and I just want to clarify this, that any 2 bank board members can go, or 1, but I think it would be better as 2 can go make presentations to potential donors seeking more funds. Are we all in agreement of that? And
Do
I
we
don't,
need to vote on that?
well, that's what I want to decide. Do we have to vote on that? And do we have to designate somebody? My opinion would be that it doesn't, we shouldn't designate who goes.
Because the membership might change.
You could change, or, you know, you just might have some, you know, rapport, simpatico, whatever, that makes it different. What do y'all think about that? Because, I mean, let's say somebody wants, that Ryan and I get together and say, hey, let's go approach somebody before the December 10th meeting, or Laura does, you know. I would say, let's do it. And we have the basics of what we want to present in that PowerPoint. So I think we're on our feet and able to do that now. And so I want us to do it. Do we need to do anything else in terms of a vote, in terms of saying, go ye therefore and raise funds?
I don't know that we need to vote on it, do we?
Okay,
No,
all right.
we're not
So-
violating any.
Yeah, okay.
I think as a board member, we should all know enough to be comfortable talking to folks.
Great. Okay, good. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear for takeoff on that. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So, second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.